It's opening day. The season is finally here. And on today's episode, we're previewing the Washington Nationals series against the Atlanta Braves this weekend in Washington, D.C. And to do that, joining me will be Ryan Clary of Locked On Nationals. We're going to tell you everything you want to know about opening day game and the rest of the series on today's episode of Locked On Braves. So let's get into it.
You are Locked On Braves, your daily Atlanta Braves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, and welcome back to Locked On Braves, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, where we cover your favorite Atlanta sports teams each and every day. I am your host, Jake Mastroianni. You can follow me on Twitter at ShortstopBall. Also, make sure you check out the podcast on Twitter at LockedOn_Braves. Make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube if you're new, and follow us wherever you get your podcast at Locked On Braves. Thanks as always for making Locked On Braves your first listen of each and every day. We post episodes 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, and we're free and available on all platforms. Me and Graham McCauley will be back doing the postcast after the majority of games this upcoming season. You can get the video version of that over at Locked On Sports Atlanta on YouTube, or you'll get the audio version of that in your Locked On Braves podcast feed. So a lot of great content coming out. I did have a season preview with Grant McCauley on the podcast yesterday, but on today's episode, we are going to preview this National Series over the weekend, letting you know what to expect from the Nationals. Will the Braves win this series? They certainly better. Everything you need to know about this upcoming opening day series weekend in Washington, D.C. So I hope you enjoy this conversation that I have with Ryan. Hope you have a great opening day, and make sure that you are locked on to Locked On Braves all season long for all of the Braves content that you could need.
Today, we are doing a crossover for opening day as the Braves and the Nationals are set to get started today. I'm joined by Jake Mastroianni from Locked On Braves. Jake, what's going on, my friend? How you doing?
Hey, Ryan, I'm ready. It's opening day. It's what we've been waiting for all season long. So I know maybe Nationals fans aren't quite as excited as Braves fans are, although I think there's a lot of fun things to watch with that Nationals team this year. But it should be an exciting season. Looking forward to get it going.
Exactly. And, baseball's back in town for DC. Yeah. We know we're not going to win that many games. You don't need to remind us, Jake.
Sorry.
It's a tough season for us. But, here, at the end of the day, this is about development for the Nationals. And we do have a lot of young guys who will be making an impact on this team moving forward. So just kind of getting into the opening day feel of it, we have Patrick Corbin starting on the mound tonight. That's not really the optimistic view that the Nationals wanted. But again, you guys have Max Fried going on the hill. So I think people want to hear more about Max Fried and what Braves fans are expecting over there in Atlanta.
Yeah, it couldn't be more of an optimal matchup, I think, on opening day for the Braves because they've had a lot of success over Patrick Corbin. As, again, I don't mean to rain on the Nationals parade on opening day, but a lot of teams have. And over recent years, but the Braves in particular, they have just feasted on Patrick Corbin. He was 0-3 against the Braves last year, gave up 15 earned runs in 3 starts. So with this Braves lineup, as deep as it is, I think they're, looking for put up a big number on opening day. I hope anyway. The one thing is it's a day game, and you may not be aware, Braves were not great, especially offensively in day games last season. So hopefully that trend doesn't start in 2023, but the Nationals actually did pretty well against Max Fried last season. He had 3 starts against the Nationals, had a 4.5 ERA, which is very high for him. Gave up 20 hits in 18 innings, 1 walk, 9 earned runs, and 14 strikeouts. So, the Nationals held their own against Max Fried last season as well. But again, Patrick Corbin, Braves have just kind of had his number here recently. So I'm looking for them to hopefully put up a big number on opening day.
Yeah, last year the Nationals kind of had a right-handed, heavy-hitting lineup, and this year is sort of similar to the same, especially in the second half of last season after trading away Josh Bell and Juan Soto. So obviously we have those 2 bats who are no longer with us, and it's not really the same lineup. So I feel like Max Fried will be able to take advantage of the Nationals, unfortunately. But with that being said, it's a divisional matchup. We've seen Max Fried before, and we have been
Mhm.
able to hit him around. And, it's opening day after all. There's a little optimism in the air, Jake, for me at least. So I
Yeah.
feel like this Nationals team could eventually pounce on Fried and get to him because, again, it's opening day. Anything can happen in baseball. So the best pitcher in the world could look like Patrick Corbin, you know?
No, absolutely. It is opening day and spring hope's eternal, right? So, everybody's excited for opening day. You never know what's going to happen. The Braves have gotten off to slow starts the last 2 years as well, a trend that Braves fans are hoping doesn't continue in 2023. But maybe the pitching matchup I'm most excited about is the Saturday matchup with Spencer Strider and Josiah Gray.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very big on Strider coming into the season. I think he has a chance to contend for a Cy Young. And I think Josiah Gray has a bit of a bounce back season as well. Maybe not bounce back, maybe a breakout season for him as, a very good young pitcher. So I don't know about you, Ryan, but I think that's going to be a pretty interesting matchup on Saturday between two young pitchers.
Yeah, you read my brain there, honestly, because I just want to skip this Thursday matchup and talk about Saturday because Josiah Gray for the Nationals, I mean, he's as exciting as it gets for when it comes to watching young prospects this year with the Nationals. And obviously with Strider as well and what he did just last year. That's going to be a really exciting matchup that I even think will get a little more draw for fans, at least for Nationals fans. And because they're going to want to see Josiah Gray this year. Last year he led the National League in walks. He led the major leagues in home runs given up. That's not something that we want to see from Josiah Gray. But also, if you look at the home runs that was given up, about 66% of the bombs that were given up were off of his fastball. Nationals fans want to see this year that Josiah Gray can establish his fastball in the major leagues because you probably don't really know this unless you're really following the prospects. But Josiah Gray's fastball is what got him into be a top 50 prospect in all of baseball across most major sites. Last year, his fastball got rocked in the major leagues. So that's something that Nationals fans want to see a little step up with when it comes to Josiah Gray because he does have all the tools. He's got the weapons in his arsenal that he can be a difference maker for the Nationals. It's just if he can establish that fastball in the major leagues.
Well, I know as a Braves fan, and, I just kind of thought this, just thinking back on the year last year, I was like, it really felt like Josiah Gray dominated the Braves. And I go back and look at his numbers from last year, 11 innings pitched against the Braves, only allowed 2 hits and 1 earned run. Now, he did walk 5 batters, struck out 7 in 2 starts, but he was lights out against the Braves last year in 2 starts. So, according to Braves fans and the limited view I got of him last year, I thought he was a Cy Young candidate because he was that good against the Braves. So I think that's going to be a very intriguing matchup. And then, again, I talked about Spencer Strider. I'm really high on him, Ryan. Obviously, second in Rookie of the Year last year, only because Michael Harris of the Braves had such an outstanding season. But what Spencer Strider did was historic. He became the fastest player to reach 200 strikeouts in a season. If he can do that, over a full year and continue that type of dominance, I just think he has the ability to be in that Cy Young conversation. So I'm really excited to see that pitching matchup on Saturday. And then on Sunday, another really good pitching matchup between two young prospects as well. Jared Schuster will be making his major league debut for the Braves and going up against a former really, top pitching prospect in Mackenzie Gore. So I think Sunday's matchup is going to be a really fun one as well.
Yeah, Nationals fans, we didn't get to see Mackenzie Gore last year. Obviously, one of the main pieces in that Juan Soto return. And honestly, I'm going into this season thinking that Mackenzie Gore will be the Nationals' best starting pitcher this year. And I'm really high on Josiah Gray and obviously Cade Cavalli before he ended the season with Tommy John surgery. But I think Mackenzie Gore is the ace of this staff. And it's just from what we have seen with the Padres just last year. If you look at his numbers, his first 7 starts, he was amongst the game's best pitchers, not even rookies, pitchers in all of baseball. He was that dominant for the Padres. So we traded for him last year. He had elbow inflammation and we shut him down. There was no reason to try to even trot him out there. It was a lost season at that point in August. But this season, he's healthy. He had a little bit of a rough spring training, but also 2 days ago against the New York Yankees in an exhibition game, he dominated them. So that was kind of the outing that Nationals fans wanted to see from him before we get to see him in the regular season because he had his ups and downs in spring training. But I don't know about you. I don't really care too much about spring training production, especially when it comes to pitchers. It's going to take some time for them to ramp up. But Mackenzie Gore is someone that all Nationals fans are extremely excited about to see him finally pitch with the curly W hat on. How about that?
Yeah, and look, just looking at an outside perspective, if the Nationals are going to get going and turn this thing around, I really think they can do it on the mound with guys like Josiah Gray, with Mackenzie Gore. I know you got the unfortunate news with Cade Cavalli, but guys like that, and then also those young outfield prospects that could be coming up this year as well at some point, Robert Hassel, maybe James Wood down the line as well. So I think there is optimism for this Nationals team looking forward in the future. I think Braves fans will get to see some of that on Saturday and Sunday's games, watching Gray and Gore. Next, I want to turn our attention to kind of the future and the outset of the rest of the season. Also talk about some players who could be your picks to click in this upcoming series this weekend between the Braves and Nationals. We'll get to that here next. But it is opening day, and so now is the perfect time to get in the action at FanDuel, America's #1 sports book, because new customers get our no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from the money line to point scores and also home runs hit. How many home runs are the Braves going to hit off Patrick Corbin? I don't know if that's a line on FanDuel. I haven't looked, but that would certainly be an interesting one. But you can do all that over at FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make sure you go there to get more info, and don't miss your chance at the no sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets. Also, visit FanDuel.com/playsafe for tools and resources to help you stay in control of the way you play. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA and hopefully the MLB one day as well. All right, we got our NL East preview coming out that me and Ryan and the other Locked On hosts, NL East Locked On hosts did. That should be in your audio feed and coming out on video. Should be out on video Wednesday as well, so make sure that you go check that out. A lot of coverage, I know, on Locked On Braves this week with opening day. I know as well over there at Locked On National as well, so make sure you're subscribed to both those podcasts. All right, Ryan, getting into just further series preview content here. Who are some bats? We talked a lot about the pitchers. Who are some bats for the Nationals that Braves fans should be aware of, and who you think could have a good opening series weekend?
So I'm looking at a lot of young guys here with the Nationals, and that's the theme of this season for the Nats. But I'm looking at a guy, Luis Garcia. Luis Garcia was a top 100 prospect going into 2020. The Nationals brought him up a little prematurely during that COVID season, if you remember, with the taxi squad and everything. And we had a huge COVID pandemic breakout within the Nationals clubhouse. So that's why he got called up a little earlier. But I'm looking at Luis Garcia. I think the time is now for him to really break out. And also, I'm going to look at his middle infielder tandem, and that's C.J. Abrams. C.J. Abrams was a top 10 pick, a former top prospect, and this is someone that the Nationals fans are expecting to break out this year. And you may be a little familiar with him coming from Georgia out of high school, but C.J. Abrams, I think, really has a high ceiling. And a lot of people in D.C., they see Trey Turner in him. I don't see that just yet.
We don't need another Trey Turner. He already kills the Braves enough.
Exactly. And so, we don't want him either. We don't want to face him. We just want him on our team. But C.J. Abrams, he's got that hit tool. He's got the speed, and he's a really stout defender in my mind over in shortstop. So I think C.J. Abrams this year will probably be the guy to watch offensively. And obviously there's others with Keibert Ruiz, but Luis Garcia and C.J. Abrams are my two guys to really watch for Braves fans.
Yeah, I really love C.J. Abrams. I thought that was a really good return for the Nationals in that trade. I think he's a really just exciting, potential five-tool type of player. I think he has that ability, so I'm excited to see what he can do. Hopefully not against the Braves, but just as a baseball fan, excited to see what C.J. Abrams can do. As far as the Braves side of things for hitters, you look at the spring training Matt Olson had, and I don't know if Nats fans have paid as much attention to it. And like we talked about, I don't know how much stock you put into spring training numbers, but the guy hit 8 home runs in spring training. I mean, he was just unreal. And a lot of Braves fans, and I've said it throughout the offseason, just his second year in Atlanta now, feeling a little bit more comfortable in his home ballpark and then with his new team. I just feel like Matt Olson is set for a breakout year. So if you're having your last-minute fantasy baseball drafts, take Matt Olson because I think it's going to be a monster year for him. I mean, 40-plus home runs. He's going to be batting second, it looks like, in the Braves lineup. So, could have a lot of runs and RBI as well. But I just think it's going to be a huge year for Matt Olson. He just seems more relaxed. He seems like he's, become a fixture in that clubhouse now. Mm-hmm. Not that he wasn't last year, but I mean, he was taking over for Freddie Freeman last year. That had to be a lot of pressure and weight on him to try to fill those shoes. But now he just seems more relaxed. It's his job. He's here for the future. And I just think he's going to really have a monster year for the Braves. So that's one player that I'm looking to, get off to a hot start here early in the season, just carry over that momentum that he had in spring training. And then obviously I got to talk about Ronald Acuna Jr. because I think he has the ability to win the NL MVP this year if he is healthy, if he is back to, pre-ACL injury Ronald Acuna Jr., which is a big question, and we need to see it. In my mind, he's the best player in all of baseball because of what he can give you with his power and his speed, and that's what we were seeing before that injury. So I hope he gets off to a good start as well. I think this could be a good weekend for him, going up against a couple lefties that the Nationals are going to be throwing. I think it could be a big weekend for Ron Acuna Jr. and Matt Olson at the top of that order for the Braves to really get the offense going. But what are some of your concerns? What are some of your weaknesses that you're worried about for the Nationals facing the Braves this weekend?
The Nationals, as we know, they do have a lot of holes defensively. And, the Nationals were the worst defensive team in all of baseball last season. This year, I'm a little concerned about third base with Jeimer Candelario, and specifically going against this Braves pitching staff. I just don't really have too much faith in Candelario. Yes, he led the American League in doubles in 2021. Yes, he has had some production in recent years, but this guy was DFA'd by the Detroit Tigers for a reason. He hasn't had that good of a stretch the last few years with the Tigers, and now he's going to be taking over the hot corner here in DC, and there's just not much optimism there, I feel like there are some guys in our clubhouse that could be a better fit, especially going against this Braves rotation, because going against Max Fried, that's where I'm a little concerned about with Candelario. He's going to get fooled on a lot of breaking balls, and that's something that we've seen all of spring training. And again, I don't really put too much into spring training, but also you're a veteran. You have to be able to start taking some accountability with these pitches and actually doing something with it. And it's kind of frustrating to see a vet like that who probably really shouldn't be a starting third baseman in the bigs, let alone for a rebuilding team that is looking for the future. And he's just not really part of that plan as we sit here today. So going into this series, I'm going to be watching Candelario and what he can do, just because of the fact that he really probably shouldn't even be the starting third baseman. I think there are guys in our system who could take a step up, but let alone we're not doing that. So Candelario is going to be someone I have to keep an eye out for. But obviously, Jake, what are your guys? Because, I mean, you guys have a lot to look forward to, I guess.
Yeah, we do. I mean, look, it's a good team. I've said it, throughout previewing the season this week. I think it's the deepest team the Braves have ever had. But if there are some concerns for me with this opening weekend, and I know it sounds ridiculous, but it is the day game factor. For whatever reason, the Braves really struggled with that. And it's also going up against two young guys who they don't have a lot of data against. It just seems like the Braves struggle against those guys that they haven't faced before. And then as they get more accustomed to them, as most hitters do, then they seem to really tee off. So that worries me a little bit. The fact that, Gray really was good against the Braves last year. Maybe now they do have that added information against them, seeing them, but then Mackenzie Gore as well. So that's probably my biggest concern coming into this weekend, is just facing those young guys, not having seen them a ton before, maybe that keeping the Braves hitters down a little bit early in those games. But on the flip side of that, this being the opening day series weekend, I can't imagine the Nationals are going to push either of those pitchers very far into the game. And when you get into the bullpen, I think that's where the Braves really are going to have an advantage over a lot of teams this year, even though they're going to be without Raisel Iglesias to begin the season. And that's what gives me, I think the Braves should win the series either way, but that's what makes me feel a little bit more confident about the Braves winning this series is that I do think they have a huge advantage in the bullpen, and I don't think the Nationals are going to push Josiah Gray or Mackenzie Gore too far in their first outings of the year. So I do think the Braves win the series. I do think the Nationals get one of these games, but what are your thoughts? Who do you see winning the series?
I do see the Braves winning the series. I'll just pull that Band-Aid right off. But I do see us stealing a game, and I don't think it's going to be opening day. I think it'll be either when Josiah Gray or Mackenzie Gore are on the bump Saturday and Sunday. And listen, honestly, a lot of people kind of sleep on this Nationals bullpen. We actually do have some younger pieces who are already in the majors. And honestly, we have guys like Hunter Harvey, a former first-round pick for the Baltimore Orioles, and he has been someone who stepped up huge last year, and he was one of our main pieces out of the bullpen. You have guys like Kyle Finnegan, and so I think with the Nationals, as far as bullpens go, that's not really a concern for us at this point, especially if you can get 5 innings from Josiah Gray or Mackenzie Gore this weekend. I'm interested to see what our bullpen can do against a loaded Atlanta Braves lineup. So I think we take one. I don't think it's going to be opening day, unfortunately, but I think we take one with either Gray or Gore on the mound. And if I were to pick one, I'd probably say Josiah Gray, just from what I've seen over the last month in spring training.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And, sweeps are hard to predict and are hard to complete in baseball anyway. So, but I do think it is probably one of the Saturday or Sunday games. Watch it be opening day now. But
of course,
I do think if the Nationals are going to win one, it's going to be either Saturday or Sunday. I actually lean towards the Sunday game just because, Mackenzie Gore going, Jared Schuster making his pro debut. That's the one that maybe worries me a little bit more just because even though I like Josiah Gray, I think Spencer Strider can match him blow for blow.
Oh, yeah.
So I would say the Sunday one is the one where I see the Nationals having the best opportunity. All right, now looking forward past this series, last question from me here. What is the outlook for the Nationals going forward? What would be considered a successful season for the Nationals? Obviously, the Braves, we're in a position, we want to win the division. We want to get back to the postseason, win the World Series, and see some of this young talent just continue to improve and stay healthy. That's what we want to see as Braves fans. But as Nationals fans, what are you looking forward to the rest of the season? What would be considered a successful season for the Nationals?
Jake, I've been talking about the 2 Ds for the Washington Nationals. It's drafting and developing, and that is what this season is all about. Obviously, we're going to hone in on the development part. You got to have guys like C.J. Abrams, Keibert Ruiz, Mackenzie Gore, Josiah Gray. All those young pieces are going to have to develop this year. And if they can, even if you get 2 of those guys who establish themselves as key parts of the future for the Nationals, that is a successful season in my mind. Listen, we're not fooling anybody. We know that this Nationals team is not going to be winning too many games here. And then, there's no real expectations as far as counting wins this year. So I don't really look too far into the win column because I know a lot of fans in DC are like, well, we can win. We can, but will we? Probably not. And most people have to understand that. So the development portion of these young guys will be a huge key for the Nationals. How about the Braves? What's a successful season in your mind?
Yeah, I think it has to be a World Series. Look, I know that's lofty expectations, but this team is built to win now. And like I said, I think it's one of the deepest teams that they've had in a long time. And they're just at that point now where it's World Series or bust. And it's a fun place to be in. It also makes expectations really hard for Braves fans because you look at last year and the Braves won 101 games. They won the division for a 5th straight season. And yet there's fans that are irate because they got bounced in the first round. And, so that's kind of just where we are at this point. Winning the division is not enough. Getting to the postseason isn't enough. It's winning World Series championships. And again, it's a great and fun place to be in, as a fan for sure. But it does kind of, really increase those expectations from a fan perspective of what a successful season looks like when baseball is a really hard game to play, and winning a division and winning 100+ games should be a huge feat in and of itself. But again, this team is at a place where they expect to win, and they expect to win division championships. They expect to reach the World Series. They expect to win the World Series. So that is the goal for the Braves this year, and I certainly think they're capable of getting there. I am excited to see this Washington Nationals team, though, and see those young players. I thought they've done a great job in this rebuild and the moves that they've made and the young players they brought in. I think they've done a great job, and honestly, I think they're going to surpass the Marlins pretty soon, who I don't think have done as great of a job in building out their farm system and developing. So I think it'll be an exciting season for Nationals fans. Maybe it doesn't come in terms of wins, like you said, but I think you're going to continue to see a lot of these young players come up, with those outfield prospects that they have, we mentioned earlier. I think you're going to be a lot of fun to watch. So I'm excited for the future of this Nationals team, but they're just in a really tough division. I mean, it's not just the Braves. You got the Mets and the Phillies to contend with. And I do think the Marlins are ahead of the Nationals right now as well. But again, I think the Nationals, with the moves they've made and the rebuild they have, I think they're coming. It's probably still 2 or 3 years away, but I really like the young pieces that they have there. All right, that will do it for this episode, this crossover edition of Locked On Braves and Locked On Nationals. Make sure you go follow Ryan on Twitter. Make sure you follow Locked On Nats on YouTube, podcast. You want to get, stay up in touch with the Nationals all season long and what they got going over there. Make sure that you give him a listen. Thanks so much for making Locked On Braves and Locked On Nats your first listen of each and every day. Now go make your second listen to Locked On MLB podcast, where Paul Francis Sullivan gives you the biggest storylines from each and every team from around the league each and every day. All right, that will do it for this one. Again, thanks for listening. Follow us in all the places. It's going to be an exciting season. It's opening day, Ryan. Let's get it started. And again, that'll do it for this episode of Locked On Braves. Thanks so much for listening. Thanks to you, to Ryan, for jumping on the podcast and previewing this upcoming series with the Nationals. But again, that'll do it for this. Make sure that you subscribe to us on YouTube. Make sure you follow the podcast at LockedOn_Braves. Follow me at Shortstop Ball. Make sure that you rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcast. And we will talk to you next time.